Okay, guys, thank you once again for joining me today. So I am still working and continuing to work on the Microsoft and Azure security services and landscape. Now, in my first video, I kind of put it in perspective and produce a video on it that tell you the two sides to Microsoft and Azure security estate. And that is Microsoft side and the Azure side. And I postulated that the reason why I divided this into two is because I have used these toolings enough to see that some of the services and the toolings will remain agnostic to Azure environment, while some will serve both they will serve both Azure services and they will serve what I classify as Microsoft services. And by doing that, so I try to streamline the process or the tooling and the solution into two sides, the Azure side and the Microsoft side. And in the Microsoft side, I highlighted the tools and the services that fall under that as at today, and they are like 7. And the other one, I put them into group, and the group is like 6. Now, the first thing I'm doing in this video series is to walk us through individual tools and services within the Microsoft, landscape. So after that, I will go to the other side, which is the Azure side. Now today, before today, so I did that on the first video. The second video, which correlate the first services or tool within the Microsoft side, which is Entra ID. So Microsoft Entra. I have done another video on Microsoft Entra. Then I move forward to the Microsoft Almighty Defender. So I've done a video on that as well. So this is my 4th video in this series, and this one is based on Microsoft Sentinel. So if you look at my screen, you will see that I already have a Microsoft Sentinel here. But what I want to do is not to do a deep dive. I believe that if you want to write infrastructure as code to enable or to consume any of the functionality within Microsoft Sentinel, you have to know what exactly is the right in that particular suite. You have to be able to, understand it end to end. And my job here is to bring that knowledge to you, where you understand the functionality, what it can do, the business problem itself, and stuff like that. So if you look at here, you will see that I have like almost 3 subhead here. I have threat management, I have content management, and I have what I call configuration. So now we're going to look at them one after the other. But before we do that, let's dive into what I would call some intro. So every security product I've covered so far in this series, Entra, Defender, operate on signals from Microsoft, surfaces, your endpoints, your email, your identity, your cloud apps. Those are the ones I've dealt with under Entra and Defender. So, but your enterprise is not only Microsoft. You have firewalls from other vendors, on-premises server, Linux system, network switches, AWS workload, a SIEM from your old environment, your legacy system, third-party tools your team has been using for years. So Defender XDR does not ingest all of that. It was not built to do that. So my last video was on Defender XDR and Defender Cloud Apps. So now who does that? That is the gap Microsoft Sentinel fills. So welcome back to my world again, to my series. My name once again is John Kayode, and people call me John K. I always say that my job sits at the intersection of product security and software engineering. And in that, we have the cloud. So in my multi-cloud journey and approach, I am bringing to you under the Microsoft and the Azure, estate, the 4th video, which I said is centered on Microsoft Sentinel. Now, I provisioned an environment where I will do this walkthrough. You can see it on my screen. So before I do that, we want to just say that Defender XDR and Sentinel are not competitors. Note that they are complementary layers that Microsoft has now unified into one portal. And you have to note that too, because in the next couple of months or maybe a year, you will not be able to access Sentinel in Azure environment anymore. It's moving into security.microsoft.com, which is where I always call the Microsoft agnostic platform, which is like the other side of Azure. So we have to know that security professionals, security practitioners. So Defender handles your Microsoft 365 Surface, real-time detection and automated response across endpoints, identities, email, cloud apps. It correlates those Microsoft signals fast and automatically. Sentinel handles everything else. It ingests log from any source, Defender, Entra, Azure, AWS, GCP, on-prem, name it. That is what Sentinel does. Sentinel ingests log from different toolings. It applies analytic rules across all of that data. It runs user and entity behavior analytics to baseline user and entity behavior, and it automates response through logic apps playbook for anything that doesn't happen inside Microsoft bubbles. So together, they share one incident queue. In the Defender portal, Defender XDR releases incident from the Microsoft signals, Sentinel releases incident from anything else. Your SOC analyst sees both in the same place, work them the same way. Okay, one more critical. So I've said that in the case of the date, March 31st, 2027, Sentinel is moving totally away from Azure environment to security.microsoft.com. Okay, so what do we have to do here? Now, requirement before you can use, Sentinel. First thing you have to note is that you must be able to create a, log analytic workspace. You must enable a Sentinel in that workspace, and then you can or the Defender portal. So first, Azure subscription. Two, log analytic. Workspace. Then the third one is enable, Sentinel. Those are the three things you need to do for you to be able to use a Sentinel. So while we are that, and we get to the environment now, I want you to look at my screen, and you see that under Sentinel here, we have the first thing you want to look at is search. Now, search, it can only work if you have what I call it, a workspace. So I have a workspace here. So like I said, I have a workspace here, and I've enabled Sentinel in that workspace. So aside this, you can do a search. So search allows you to maybe search for an IP address, search for a user, search for a specific information that has been ingested into your Sentinel environment. So you can just do that quick search, and that is all. Then I go to the subhead called threat management. So under threat management, you can see we have function like almost 5 or 6 functionalities. So I want to look at all of the functionality one after the other. So the first one is workbook. So if you look at the workbook here, what does it bring to you? So you see, workbook are Sentinel's visual analytics layer. They are interactive dashboard built on Azure Monitor. Workbook that display your security data in charts, graphs, and maps. So that is what it does. But because I don't have much data here, that's why you don't see, all these graphs, all this chart, and all this map. But one thing I just want to show you is that we have a lot of templates here. And those templates cut across AWS, Cisco, and Google that you can use, you understand me now, to build, graphs, chart that give you visibility into your threat environment. So the next thing I want to say here is hunt. Yes, hunting. Hunting is where you go looking for threats that haven't generated an alert yet. You can see threats that haven't generated an alert yet. So it's like you're going after, the potential threats before they happen. And that is a very good thing. It's proactive. Sentinel comes with hundreds of built-in hunting queries written by Microsoft Threat Intelligence Team, each one targeting a specific, non-attacker techniques or suspicious pattern. You run them against your data, review the result, bookmark anything that is suspicious. So you create a hunt, you run that hunt, based on some parameters. These parameters, they are not just parameters, they are parameters that are created by professionals in the threat intelligence community. You use them, you create that hunt, you run them against your environment, then whatever you see, you review them, and you can bookmark them so that it give you, like, you're ahead of the game, right? So your hunt can be live stream, that shows it's continuously doing the work, monitoring the environment. It could be bookmark, something that you've done and you save them. And the other thing is that it can be, so you can bookmark, it can be live stream. Yeah, those are the two things. So let's go to notebook after. Okay, let me go back to the hunt. Let me show you something here. So, you can create a hunt here. Like I said, like I create one here. So depending on the information you have and the use case, you create a hunt and you use it. So I go to notebook. So what does it do? Notebook brings Jupyter notebook directly into your Sentinel. So when you hear Jupyter or Jupyter, you know that, okay, this is for most, let me say, data scientists or data science oriented, programs. It allows you to bring, this is for advanced investigation and threat hunting that goes beyond what standard query languages can do. You can combine Sentinel query language, which is KQL, with Python data science libraries like pandas, like scikit-learn to perform complex analysis, visualize network graphs of entity relationship, build machine learning models against your log data, and document your investigation methodology in a reproducible format. So what this does is that the notebook allows you to bring advanced libraries within the data science or analytical space and use that, to act or to augment your work, your SOAR work within your log environment. And this is really beautiful because it allows you to do whatever you want to do within this space without necessarily going out and maybe taking data outside. You begin to have to deal with the security and the threat threat factors. So then moving away from then I go to threat intelligence. So threat intelligence is in Sentinel is your indicator management layer. It stores and manages indicators of compromise, IP addresses, domains, file hashes, URLs that you bring in from external feeds or your own intelligence program. So what does that mean? Intelligence program, you can use external intelligence program. That shows that there are information that are out there that can help you be ahead of your security programs. So when you bring those security intelligence field into your domain and you use those knowledge, to make or certainly use those knowledge to make some decisions and point in the right direction, that is the job of threat intelligence. Is all about. So once indicators are in Sentinel, they are automatically matched against your incoming log data. You can see. So you have an intelligence gathering, from a third party or somewhere. You put it in your system. Then when signals are coming, when logs are coming in, they are being checked against those intelligence to see if they are culprit or they are not. So that is what it does. And if you look at it here, you can see here that you can create new, like TI object or TI relationships. I'm not going to go into that today because my job is to make sure that we understand the functionality, the capability, and the business problem they address. And then we can now think about where to use it, and how it is applicable in our environment before we begin to say, okay, we want to configure something or you want to deploy anything. So that is that. So then I will now move to MITRE ATT&CK. So MITRE ATT&CK, the MITRE ATT&CK page is one of the most useful things in the entire Sentinel interface and one of the latest least discussed. So it shows you a visual heat map of the attack framework, overlaid with active analytic rules. Every cell in the matrix that is highlighted represented a technique where you have at least one analytic rule providing detection coverage. Empty cells are gaps. So when you look at what you have here, if your cells are empty, whenever it's empty, it means that there's a gap that you need to fill there. So it shows you, it maps. So what I will say is that it maps your environment, directly to the MITRE ATT&CK framework and tell you where you need to pay attention. So this is your detection coverage audit before any engagement, before any compliance review, before any tabletop exercise. Open this page and look at what your gaps are. That tells you where to focus your rule development effort. So this is very important because it kind of shows you where you are and where you need to be. So you can filter by data source, by active versus inactive rules. You can do all those things. So then I move on to the next subhead, which is content management. So under the content management, we have Content Hub. So Content Hub is the Sentinel marketplace. It contains over 300 package solutions, each one a bundle that includes data connectors, analytic rules, workbooks, hunting queries, and playbook for a specific product or use case. Instead of manually finding and configuring the Defender for endpoint connector, then finding the relevant detection rules, then finding the associated workbook by one, you go to Content Hub, search for Microsoft Defender for endpoint, install the solution, and all of those endpoints or components are deployed. So if you look at what we have here, is that Content Hub is a place where you can take advantage of pre-built, let me say libraries or toolings that you can use to connect a particular solution to Sentinel. So here, if you look at AWS, there is a pre-built, integration tool here that I installed. For instance, this is Azure Activity. I can install this. Yes, so if you look at it here, I can install it. So now, instead of me, doing it manually or what have you, with this, just one click, choose it and click it, it's what is installed. That shows that I can now be ingesting, data logs from Azure, Activity. So that is the job of a Content Hub. That is the job of Content Hub. So it helps you to quickly onboard, other applications. This dramatically reduce the time from I want to connect this data source to I have full detection and visibility for this data source. It's one of the biggest improvements Microsoft has made to the Sentinel onboarding experience. So solutions are maintained by Microsoft and by partners. When a solution is updated, new rules added, existing rules improved, you get an update notification and can deploy the changes with one click. And you can even ignore it if you like, depends on your environment and your use case. So the next thing I want to talk about is a repository. Now, this is beautiful because what repository does is that it allows you to connect your Sentinel workspace to CI/CD pipeline, like GitHub or Azure DevOps. Now, how does that happen? For instance, the best way repository lets you connect your Sentinel workspace to GitHub or Azure DevOps repository, manage your Sentinel content, analytic rules, playbook, whatever you want to do, whitelist as a code. So the beautiful thing about this particular utility is that it allows you to connect your environment, your workspace to like GitHub, and you can write code to do the job you're supposed to do, like writing rules, writing playbooks, workbook, and spinning up a watch list, maybe using a bicep or using Terraform or derivative of all those things. So when you push a change to your repository Sentinel, automatically deploys it to your workspace. This is how mature security engineering teams manage Sentinel at scale. Your rules are version control. That is the language. That is the best thing. Every change is auditable. You can test in a development workspace and promote to production through a pipeline. You can roll back a bad rule without manually reconfiguring it in the Pora. If your organization has more than a handful of Sentinel workspace or team of analysts writing rules, repository is how you operate it professionally and at scale. So I will move to what I call community. So let me just get this straight. So community is a direct link to the Microsoft Sentinel GitHub repository that shows that GitHub repository team they are dumping some stuff there that could be useful. The public community where Microsoft engineers and broader security community contribute hunting queries, analytic rules, workbook, and playbook. So this is a community whereby people, individuals, and even Microsoft themselves, people contribute, people have a problem, they solve the problem, and the solution, they outsource it. This is genuinely valuable source. So instead of you reinventing the wheel something, you want to look it out. Now, the good thing about this is that Microsoft bring it to Sentinel environment. It's not like something that is you have to go and look for somewhere, but it's within the environment now, so you can take advantage of that. So I move to configuration. So configuration, the first functionality within configuration is table. Table is your schema reference for everything stored in your log analytic workspace. Every data source that flows into Sentinel lands in a specific table. Secure alert, sign in logs, Office activity, Azure activity, all of them land in a table. When log is coming to Sentinel, it's coming into a table. And so now, if you understand the table, you understand the data that resides in the table, the name of the table, and the structure of the table, it makes it easier for you to be able to write queries, KQL queries, against that table. So and it means that so you manage your retention, and from there you can manage your retention setting, like how long does data have to be in interactive mode, for fast query, and when it moves to archive tiers at a reduced cost, when it needs to be purged entirely. So this helps you to say, okay, how long do we have to keep this in a very volatile, storage mechanism? How long can we keep it in archive format whereby we not spend more? Then how long do we need to keep it totally? If at a particular point we need to get rid of it. So these are the things you can get with that. So I move to. So if you look at it here, we have tables here. So let me just look and see some of the tables. Behavior info. So these are our tables here. They are our tables here. So if you look at it, table name. And there's some other information you can get about it. Okay, so let me look at data connectors. So let's look at this. So what is data connector, especially in within Microsoft ecosystem? Data connector is how data gets into Sentinel. It is arguably the most important configuration session in the entire platform because Sentinel is only as good as the data it receives. The connector gallery show you every available source, Microsoft first partner, Microsoft integration, and community contribution. You can filter by any means. But what you need to do, what you need to know is that these are the connectors. You can see, you can connect AWS, you can connect Cisco, and you can connect Microsoft itself, you can connect Google, So it allows you to connect to those third party, those solutions. And if you don't have a connector for your solution, one can be written, one can be developed for you. So yeah, then analytic. Okay, so analytic is where detection lives. Where detections live. This is where Sentinel evaluates your incoming data against rules and generate alert that become incident in the unified query. So there are 4 types of rules. One is schedule rule, near real-time rules, fusion rules, anomaly rules. All of that has some kind of semantics as to the baseline rule. But the most important thing I want to tell you is to let you know that this is where the evaluation comes, evaluation of your incoming data exists. This is where it takes place. So when data is coming in, the existing rules, maybe default rules or the one you write, is as they are coming, as those data are coming, they are matching it against the rules. Okay, data is coming, match it against the rule. If there's any of the signals within the data or signature within the data that violated that rules or violated that rule, then it fires an alert and you get an incident that you follow up from there. So that is what analytic does. That is what analytic does. So you have can see suspicious volume here. You can see some of the rules being violated here. So yeah, so that is that. So then I move to summary rules. So summary rules are cost and performance optimization that most Sentinel tutorials skip, but they are worth understanding. So high volume data sources like DNS logs are very voluminous. Network flow records, they are too. Firewall traffic, they are very voluminous. They can generate hundreds of millions of records per day. Storing all of that in an interactive analytic table is expensive and slow to query. So what do? You still need that data for detection and investigation. So summary rules let you define an aggregation query that runs on a schedule and write compressed summarized output to a custom table. Instead of keeping hundreds million row DNS record, you keep a summary table that shows usual domain queries, volume by IP access. So what you do here is that you use summary to write, an aggregation of query that runs on schedule, and whatever it gets, we get from the underlying table, it summarizes them, compresses them, and bring the output into a more efficient table. And instead of you now running query or maybe application against that gigantic, source, you'll be running against a more lightweight version of that table or that resources, and that allow you to cut costs because you are not running against that large query where you have to do a lot of work. Then it brings performance also to your query and to the output of your SOAP operation. So you can create query here, like I said, existing custom log table, stuff like that. What that is why I'm here. So go to watch list. So what is watch list? Watch list are reference data table you create inside Sentinel that can be joined against your log data in KQL. So a few practical examples: you upload your list of all VIP users, executives, privileged admins, board members. Your analytic rule join against that watch list so that any suspicious activity involving those accounts generate a higher severity alert. So what you do with watch list is like you are creating a list, and you want your Sentinel system to be watching out for every piece of information in this list. So if something is happening to that information, I want to see it. I want to get it as soon as possible. So that is what you achieve with watch list. You create a list of something very important. You instruct your system to constantly watch it, and if you find anything, don't let it just be slide. Put it at the forefront of the burner, and from there I will take it over. So that is what watch list does. Then the last but not the least on this list here is automation. So what is automation? Automation is the SOAR, that is security orchestration, automation, and automation response layer. This is where Sentinel goes from a detection engine to a response engine. It has two components, the automation rules and the playbook. Automation rules are lightweight, no code response logic that runs immediately when an incident is created or updated. Then playbook are Azure logic app, workflows triggered by Sentinel, incident or alert. This is where the real SOAR power lives. So that is what automation does. But in putting all of these together, let me put out this in one of my notes here. So let me tie it together. Data connectors, one of the functionality in Microsoft Sentinel, brings your data in. Tables store it in a structured schema. Analytics rules evaluate it and generate alerts. UEBA and Fusion correlate across sources and dictate patterns. Watch list and threat intelligence make your rules smarter. Hunting lets your team go looking before alert fires. Notebook lets your analysts go as deeper as data goes. Automation and playbook close the loop from decision to response without waiting for a human to wake up. Workbook make all of it visible to stakeholders who don't run queries. MITRE ATT&CK shows you where your coverage is and where it isn't. So Content Hub, what does that do? Content Hub accelerates all of the above with a pre-built solution deployed in minutes. Repositories let you manage it all professionally as code. That is Sentinel, not a product, a complete security operation platform that sits on top of your data across your entire estate, regardless of what tools you run. So that is the end of the Microsoft Sentinel. Microsoft Sentinel. So one thing I want to say that Sentinel is not Defender. It is the layer that extends detection and response to everything outside the Microsoft surface. You need both Extender and Sentinel. So, two, your cost is determined by the injection strategy. So the cost of your Sentinel is determined by your injection strategy. What do you want to ingest? How long do you want to keep them? And what do you want to do with them? So then, as from March next year, Sentinel will be moving totally away from Azure environment and will be moving into security.microsoft.com. Then, so the next episode is Microsoft Purview. Stay around for this. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.